Hi everybody, I'm Bryan Mudd, a fan of South Plains politics. Here's your talking points for this week. Commissioners say the Sheriff's Department's way overdue for pay raises, but the budget won't cover it. We'll break down the proposed tax increase that will. And a further breakdown of order in Afghanistan. Our congressman on what happened and what's next for folks in that country who helped Americans.
From the studios of KAMC Television in Lubbock, your local election headquarters. This is Talking Points with Bryan Mudd.
Joining us, everybody, also this week, quantity, not quality. In a shuffle full of news cycles and dumpster fires is this continuing tidal wave of illegal immigrants pushing across our southern border. Customs and Border Patrol reports over 212,000 migrants arrested in July alone, the most in 21 years, and we're easily on the way to a calendar year record. And these are just the folks who got caught. 45% of those were immediately sent back using a Trump administration emergency health policy known as Title 42. Arrest of migrants with criminal backgrounds is also way up, as are the number of people hired to process asylum cases. That backlog is so severe, some people are being released from custody with orders to come back because they have no place to put them all. So what happens to them? Well, in some cases, they're sent off to family or so-called sponsors. And we recently got a look at that process at the airport in Abilene, and our Marley Capper shows us.
Lands on the tarmac. An unmarked bus pulls up next to it. That's when people exit the plane. They're all dressed the same, they get shackled, they get frisked, and then they board the bus. We followed that bus and it drives to an ICE facility, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, in Jones County, known as the Blue Bonnet Detention Facility. Also seen at the airport, a bus dropping people off. We later find out they are undocumented immigrants and they wait for a flight in the terminal. No longer in custody, we spoke to one of those undocumented immigrants. He did not want to go on camera, but agreed to talk to us. We'll call him John. John tells us his story.
I crossed the border on the 12th and then turned myself into immigration. They took me to McAllen. In McAllen, they took my information and took me to the detention center.
After 3 days in McAllen, John says he was transported to El Paso, where he spent a few days.
They checked us, gave us medical, tested us for COVID. Then they separated those with COVID. They quarantined us.
After the immigrants are quarantined, those who have a travel plan in place are taken to an airport or bus stop by ICE.
Bringing charter flights in with immigrant detainees.
Don Green, Abilene's Director of Transportation Services, confirms this has been happening.
And they are released from ICE custody and able to travel to a location that's predetermined, I guess, to a sponsor that they have in the U.S.
John says they're released so they can fight their case outside of the ICE facility.
In my case, they gave me 26 days to appear in front of a judge.
We wanted more answers as to what was happening at Abilene's airport, so we went directly to ICE. They confirmed they use Abilene's airport to transport undocumented immigrants. According to ICE, they are transporting the immigrants to facilities near their U.S. sponsor, and the immigrants have a temporary support plan prior to their release. John left from Abilene Regional to his U.S. sponsor.
I'm going to Pennsylvania. Evergreen.
To fight his case.
All right, that's Marley Capper in Abilene, and Congressman Jody Arrington is here to talk about this and a whole lot more. First, in regard to this immigrant situation, did you have any idea this was being done with this, folks? You put them on a plane or bus, send them to the district, and then off to who knows where?
Well, I knew that part of the disaster that is the border chaos that we're experiencing as a result of open border policies was affecting, well, every state has become a border state as a result, and all communities have been affected. I did not know that illegal immigrants were being released into my district, into our communities, in particular Abilene. Nobody was notified, not the mayor of Abilene, not the commissioner's court, not the state representatives or the state delegation, and not myself. So that was the first issue that I took on with ICE and Homeland Security and Secretary Mayorkas was, you're kidding me. Some of these folks are COVID positive. Some of them have a criminal record here. They don't do a criminal background check in their country of origin because they don't even know what their country of origin is and they don't verify that. All that said, we didn't even have the common courtesy from this administration to tell us that this is what's going on.
You sent letters to Homeland Security and Immigration and Customs Enforcement with those questions and more. Have you heard back? Do you have anything from them?
No answers. The ICE folks were supposed to. I think Secretary Mayorkas' office said when I met with the ICE folks, try to answer all of Congressman Arrington's questions that you can until we can go through his letter. Well, my first question, Brian, was how many have you released? They couldn't even give me that answer. How many have you released? Are you following up? Where are they going? Are they COVID positive? The best I got in terms of information was some have criminal records, some are COVID positive, and so there's a public health issue, there's a public safety issue, and now our community is squarely in this mess that is the border crisis caused by this administration.
Who's paying for all this?
Well, the taxpayers are.
Yeah.
I mean, there are nonprofits involved. Of course, they get grants from the federal government, but the taxpayers, we spend billions in Texas alone. They're spending hundreds of millions of dollars just to put folks in hotels. The children who are being detained, they call them children, they're youth. We don't know if they're 18 and under or not, but they tell us what their age is and we just happen to believe them. $1,000 a day to detain, and then they get a ticket, plane ticket, compliments of the taxpayer anywhere in the country. So we're actually aiding and abetting trafficking people, going through the cartels, don't know what they owe the cartels when they get here, and then we're sending them throughout the nation. So who knows what the network of criminal activity as a result. They're not all criminals, but we don't know who is and who isn't.
With so many other things going on in the world, you know, we haven't heard a lot about the latest situation at the border itself. A couple things with that. I know Border Patrol had reported the highest number of illegal crossings in 21 years. Your thoughts on that and what's going on at this moment down there?
Well, we shouldn't be surprised. Every effective provision to secure the border and enforce the laws to reduce illegal border crossings that actually reduced illegal border crossings by 70% in the last administration have been scrapped. And the only thing remaining, and it's only partially implemented, is Title 42, which is related to the public health emergency that we're experiencing as it relates to COVID. But they're only enforcing that with adults, not with families, not with children. Well, everybody has the threat of spreading COVID who comes across that border, doesn't matter what age.
There was a federal court order basically ordering the government to bring back the Trump administration's policy of remain in Mexico while the asylum process goes forward. With that in mind and the dangers to those folks there, is that tenable? Should that happen at this point? How can it not? I don't know where to go with this.
Well, where we should go, especially with the COVID variant and the possibility of another surge in our communities, we should fully enforce Title 42. We should turn everybody around at the border, and we should have the asylum claims processed while they stay in Mexico. So that's how it should happen. That is not how it's happening. I don't see any sign of relenting in terms of this administration's open border policies, but it is, again, it's dangerous. It's a huge drain on our social safety net, and the border towns, I've been to the border several times, they are completely on fire and they feel that their government has abandoned them, and they're right. And Brian, I've said this, Texas has the constitutional sovereign right and power to defend itself when the federal government abdicates that responsibility and when the president doesn't faithfully execute the laws. Our state leaders can step up, prosecute bad guys, turn people away, basically lock the border down on account of the current public health crisis if the political will's there.
You mentioned COVID, and this is, of course, obviously blowing up once again. We hate to see it. The kids are back to school, yours and mine both, and everybody's. A lot of school districts in Texas are suing now to be able to mandate masks where they see fit, in the districts that they see fit. The governor's saying no. Where do you stand on local control of such things versus state and federal control of mask mandates or whatever related to this?
I think that we, with the vaccine, plural, with better treatment, people have the information, and I think that's one of the roles government has. Give people information and let them, with their freedom and responsibility, act accordingly. Everybody's got a different risk appetite, everybody's got a different risk profile, and people should do what's right for them and their family in consultation with their family physician. Now, when there are protocols in place, when it becomes an emergency, that is, when you don't have capacity at hospitals, that ought to be driven at a local level, because these leaders, our leaders locally, are closest to the problem, closest to the people. One of the big mistakes that Governor Abbott made, and I know it was hard and it was a tough spot, and we were all learning on the job on this unprecedented pandemic, but doing a statewide mandate is not the right approach. And I certainly, from my role, will fight and beat back any federal mandate of any kind. I don't think it's effective, and I think it's a violation of our rights. You've got to be able to protect our liberties, care about the economic impacts. We're spending trillions now on account of all this because we had shutdowns. And lastly, we also have to manage the public health implications. That's not an important factor. It is, but there are other considerations. All that's best managed with the people and their elected officials at the local level.
And we'll continue our conversation with Congressman Arrington in just a moment with his thoughts on Afghanistan. Also, the infrastructure bill still in Congress. Several things there that on paper could be good for Texans. So I'll ask the Congressman why he voted against it. Next on Talking Points.
You're watching Talking Points, a focus on the political scene in Lubbock and across the South Plains.
And welcome back. Here's a look at some of the political headlines of the past week. Attorney Trey Payne is the first to file the paperwork to run for mayor of Lubbock next spring. Payne has spent more than a decade with the Payne, Powell, and Truitt Law Group, and before that was a state and federal prosecutor, as well as an assistant district attorney for Lubbock County. After 37 days in limbo, the Texas House finally reached a quorum Thursday on day 13 of the second special session. 3 Democratic members who've not been in attendance made it back to the House floor, so the House immediately took the passed Senate bills and referred them to committees for action this weekend, which is sort of the fast way of doing things. And the troubled pullout of American forces and personnel in Afghanistan slowly continues. Of those Afghans who work with U.S. personnel who get out, we're told many will resettle here in Texas. Refugee Services of Texas reporting none are slated to come to Lubbock, but they will be going to Austin, Dallas, Houston, and Fort Worth, as well as Fort Bliss and El Paso. Let's continue our conversation now with Congressman Arrington. Do you have an issue with the timing of pulling out of Afghanistan, or just the way it got done?
Well, I think it was premature, and there wasn't a plan, and if there was any semblance of a plan, it was horribly executed, okay? So this is an international embarrassment. It is a foreign policy catastrophe, and we're jeopardizing Americans and their safety, who are, by the way, are still there. And we need to prioritize getting them out of there first and foremost. But there was a plan. President Trump basically brokered a deal between the Taliban, the current government, and other stakeholders for a peaceful transition. Who knows how that would have worked?
Right.
I don't trust the Taliban, period.
Right.
But at least we had leverage, and we put some small capacity of force in support of that plan. We have an interest in stabilizing the Middle East. We have an interest in not having a hotbed of terrorist cells that could grow to the next Al-Qaeda and ISIS. So there's a whole lot wrong now. I don't know how you can put it all in the box. At best, we can save the lives of Americans, both military and civilian. And then there is the element of those interpreters that help save the lives of our sons and daughters. And I know there's controversy and debate around that. I don't think we need to try to save the country, but for those 15 to 30,000 of the interpreters who helped intelligence and military officers and their families who will be slaughtered the day we leave the second time, we need to do something to make sure that we make good on our commitments to our allies and to those who help save the lives of our men and women in uniform. I think that's an American value and ethic. I really do.
Let's talk economy a little bit. The infrastructure bill still moving through Congress. It looks like it's going to get through in some form. Big money for highway programs and bridge repair. We got big money for rural broadband coverage, but you voted against it. Is not a good idea in your eyes. Why?
No, most bipartisan infrastructure bills don't look anything like this. They've passed before. For decades, we've been working on farm bills, and infrastructure bills in a bipartisan way. Not everybody gets what they want, and there's some bad with the good. That's life in governing our country and in politics. This has maybe 25 cents on the dollar for roads, bridges, waterways, ports, core infrastructure, the things we need to recover, the things we need to grow and create more jobs for our fellow Americans. I don't mind the broadband piece, although I think we've spent plenty of money. We just need to execute that well to go the last mile to light up rural America. I think it's all about implementation. But there's more money for the Green New Deal, foundation of the Green New Deal, than there is for core infrastructure. There's more slush fund for the DOE, billions of dollars. Mass transit, 4 times the amount that we're spending on mass transit. These are free riders, just like electric vehicles. They don't pay into the Highway Trust Fund. So you're going to get a little bit of these things, but this is a lot. It's not paid for. It's a bunch of gimmicks. The only real pay for is repurposing COVID dollars. Right. That's not even half of it. So I think it's too broad, too progressive, and I think it's too gimmicky in terms of the pay for. So I don't support it.
Talking about redistricting in Texas, we know Texas will get 2 more representatives. Do we know if their districts will affect our representation here moving forward? And is there anything being done to prevent problems with that here?
Well, it's a great question. I think for people of West Texas and the Lubbock community, we need all the votes that we can get because we're outnumbered. As we say, we're outgunned by the urban and suburban areas. They have their challenges, and they're fellow Americans, but we don't have as much influence or votes for our challenges. Infrastructure, rural hospitals, healthcare, access to care in these small towns, farm bills, etc. So I've talked to the governor, lieutenant governor, speaker. We have a great delegation with Dustin Burrows and Charles Perry and John Frullo. They are there to watch over West Texas and make sure that we come out of this with the same number. We're not going to get an additional one. The additional 2 will be in DFW and Houston, maybe San Antonio, Austin. We want to keep the 4 that we have from the Panhandle down through the far West Texas area with Tony Gonzalez. But we're working it hard, and I'm going to always operate with cautious optimism here, but I do feel like we're going to come out okay in terms of the numbers. And Texas is growing, 4 million people over the last decade, half of whom are our Hispanic community. I'm also very excited about the opportunity there with respect to traditional values of work ethic and family orientation and faith. Those folks, our fellow Hispanic Americans, I think that's going to bode well for our state, but also for Republicans, quite frankly, because I think that there's more alignment there. If Republicans will just get off their derriere and go and engage that community, because I think there's great alignment. So it's a happy story.
I think he'll be out there doing that. I don't think you've ever slowed down. I mean, we've been talking here how long? 5-6 years now. So I still have a hard time roping him in here, but we're glad when you're able to do that.
Always good to be with you,
Congressman Airden. Good to see you.
Yeah, God bless.
And straight ahead, no one likes paying more taxes, but generally people are okay with it if they think it's something important enough. See if you think the new Lubbock County tax proposal is good for you. Next on Talking Points. Governor Abbott continues to isolate and work in the governor's mansion after this week's positive COVID test. One thing lost in that news is that he officially set the special constitutional amendment election date for Tuesday, November 2nd. The city road bond will also be on there, and likely changes to the charter, and something that County Judge Curtis Parrish talked about first on last week's show, that proposed tax increase just to fund the Sheriff's Department. Our Ryan Chandler breaks down those numbers.
The County Commissioners Court voted unanimously today in favor of increasing property taxes for public safety. Sheriff deputies in Lubbock County make significantly less than their peers in other counties and city departments, just $41,000 a year starting, compared to $60,000 in the Lubbock Police Department. That means many are leaving the county for better paying jobs, leaving our department understaffed.
25% turnover at the jail, at the detention center. We can't keep up with that anymore.
County Judge Curtis Parrish says they are overdue for a raise, but it will cost you to approve it. So here's how the numbers break down. In November, you'll be asked to approve a property tax rate of 35 cents per every $100 on your home's valuation, 2 cents higher than it is now. For the average Lubbock resident, that's about $65 more per year. That would give about $5 million to the Sheriff's Department and increase a starting deputy's pay to about $49,000.
We want to make sure that all of that money, that additional 2 cents that we're proposing, goes all to the Sheriff's Department, goes all to public safety, for salaries, for disparity pay, for incentive pay, and for a couple of extra positions that the sheriff needs to keep us safe and secure in our homes.
Lubbock County Sheriff Kelly Rowe released a statement today saying your tax dollars are leaving the area to benefit other agencies. This has cost the citizens of Lubbock County approximately $2.6 million in lost training alone in 4 years. I ask you to show your support for the women and men of the Lubbock County Sheriff's Office. The county says its pitch is simple.
Take care of those who take care of us.
But it will be your choice on November 2nd.
Ryan Chandler reporting, and we'll be back with a final word. Go tell commissioners what you think about the proposed county tax increase. A public hearing tomorrow at 11 a.m. at the courthouse. And send us a comment on our KAMC News Facebook page and at everythinglubbock.com. Click weekly features and talking points to stream this and many of our past shows. It's all of our time. For all of us on Talking Points, we thank you for watching. See you right here again next week.